right, hundreds of protesters have been filling the streets in downtown Chicago, where the American Bankers Association is wrapping up its annual meeting today. For 3 straight days, taxpayers have been letting financial executives know how they feel about the way they have been handling their money. Dozens, hundreds, angry taxpayers marching in the lobby, dozens in the lobby, specifically at Wells Fargo on Tuesday, demanding that big banks cough up the big bonuses made thanks to taxpayer subsidies. Americans, of course, facing all sorts of foreclosure and other issues. Take a listen.
Say to Wells Fargo and the rest of your big bank friends in the ABA that are waging a war against the working and middle class, shame on you. Shame on you.
Shame on you, indeed. The grassroots movement getting even the attention of FDIC Chair Sheila Bair. Remember, those are taxpayer-insured assets that were used as a gambling chip on Wall Street. Again, literally taking your grandmother's bank deposits and using it as a parlor toy to support the casino, a legalized casino. Anyway, we all know the narrative. I want to get into it with George Gale, Executive Director of the National People's Action, which is the organizer of this set of protests. We have a statement as well from the American Bankers Association, who declined our invitation to join this conversation, but we'll get to their statement in just a second. Again, actually, we'll look at it now. What the heck? Bankers want smart regulation, and the ABA has testified multiple times in the past year in favor of strong regulation reform. They want the government we have to work better filling the gaps in the regulation of non-bank lenders. No one, it seems, again, strengthening safety and soundness, fixing what's broken. We all want that. No one seems to want to actually talk about the fact that a massive insurance scam was run, perhaps legalized, and that money was then paid out by the billion and trillion by the taxpayer, and none of that money has been clawed back. Remember, bank CEO's job is to decide how much risk to take. Paying yourself for risks you can't handle is stealing. Why are the bank CEOs able to keep the bonuses of the past 10 years when they basically stole that money? George, the response that the bankers gave you there, not only to the protests, which I guess that would be, we can speculate the response to that, but to the harsh words both from Senator Durbin and Sheila Bair, who said, I hope to see other measures being taken that will create more resilient, transparent, and better regulated financial system, including an end to the too big to fail doctrine, which is the doctrine by which I sell insurance against things, I keep the insurance money, it's basically stealing, and then the taxpayer bails me out. How do the bankers feel about all this?
Well, the bankers are clearly upset that we showed up at their convention. 1,000 people from 20 states, folks from all walks of life, retirees, family farmers, small business owners, homeowners, or renters came to Chicago because the ABA was having their convention here, and they have led the charge over the last 30 years to deregulate the financial markets. And now, despite all the chaos that many of their members have created, they want to continue to spend money on Capitol Hill like never before to defeat common sense financial reform.
Yeah, I just want to remind folks of what we're up against here. Again, bailouts versus bonuses. Take a look at this. This is the bailout money, the money owed to taxpayers at some of the big banks out there, and then the bonuses that they are going to pay. You're dealing with, again, $225 billion going into B of A, $30 billion in bonuses coming out. AIG, $254 billion. I mean, these numbers are incomprehensible. You take a look at this and you can see the absurdity of the fact that these bonuses are being paid when you realize it's nothing more than a taxpayer subsidized casino. And even Warren Buffett was smart enough to give the banks money, but to demand onerous terms for the banks for the use of the money. Only Hank Paulson, Tim Geithner, and Ben Bernanke, George, were the ones willing to deliver that money with no strings attached. Ironically, now take a look at this. That taxpayer money is being used by the banks to lobby against the taxpayer as we speak. Bank of America, $1.4 million. Citigroup, $3.1 million. So the money that we gave to the banks is being used by the banks to lobby against the taxpayer. George, do you feel like your message is getting through?
I think so. It was amazing how easy it was to get people to come to Chicago. We had 1,000 folks here the last 2 days, and what we expect to have 8,000 people march today in Chicago. And I think really the bonuses, the last round of bonuses, what we see coming up in the future, it was like the final taunt in the face to the American people. We started to feel like bankers and investors were sitting around drinking martinis, actually thinking, are we maybe going to get away with this? It seems like we might. We created the foreclosure crisis. We sent the economy into a tailspin. And then we needed billions in taxpayer bailouts, and now we're going to lobby to kill financial reform. And while we're at it, we'll hand out, hundreds of billions in bonuses. I think people just felt like it's enough is enough. And I think what we're going to see today is really the beginning of a much broader set of mobilizations across the country.
Although I've been thinking about giving up this whole TV thing, George, and going into the banking business, because if you can swing what you just described just by sending a few $1 million to Washington, D.C., and you don't have to even carry any collateral, that's a pretty darn good business. Ryan Grimm with us from the Huffington Post. Ryan, I know you've been spending a lot of your time, along with some of your colleagues at the Huffington Post, looking at the debtors revolt, looking at the people that are good customers that are either seeing fees attached to credit cards that they don't use, a fee for non-use, or I think the really genius one is when you think about the fact that we are giving the banks all this money, we lend them money at 0%, and then they are jacking interest rates so that they can become more profitable, and I assume use the money to go back to the legalized casino. Where do we stand in the scheme of the debtors revolt, and are you seeing more or less of this type of behavior, and if so, where?
Well, you're seeing more of it. And what the debtors revolt and what this protest out in Chicago right now shows you is that we really are at a critical time in the history of financial reform over the course of the last couple hundred years. This is something that's been happening in America, every 50 years or so. It goes back to, the 1830s when Andrew Jackson first went after the banks. Then Teddy Roosevelt around 1900 started busting up the trust. Then, 40 years later, you have FDR going after Wall Street. Now here we are 70 years later with this new movement against the banks. The American people are pretty comfortable, with wealth and with capital accumulation as long as their own standard of living is increasing and as long as the banks are following some rules. Whenever they start breaking those rules, that's when you see these kinds of uprisings of discontent. Now the question will be, has capital gotten so strong that it's able to fight off the reforms that are the historical pattern? And that's what's going on in Congress right now. That's the question that'll be answered.
Has Wall Street made Jonathan Capers such a powerful money machine that, like a Mexican drug dealer, they've got, or the heroin dealers in Afghanistan. Right. Once you build the magic money machine, it doesn't. No one can compete with you to buy off politicians.
And that's probably why we haven't seen the culture change on Wall Street that we've seen in the rest of America, where people who were spending like crazy on September 14th are now suddenly saving like there's no tomorrow today. I have a question for George and for Ryan. First, for George, are there any plans to take these protests that you've organized for Chicago and bring them to Capitol Hill? And for Ryan, have you heard of any other movements out there who are planning to bring their protest message from the hinterlands, if you will, to Washington, D.C., to the Capitol? George first.
If I can start. What we're going to see come out of tomorrow, or today rather, is a set of bank actions all across the country targeting some of the biggest banks. That's where people's frustration is at, and that's where they want to go, be present, and mobilize. But really what they're trying to create is a which side are you on moment for the president, for Barney Frank, for Chris Dodd. Are you going to continue to stand with the financial industry, or are you going to have the guts to take them on and stand with the American people? And at every one of these actions across the country, the message is going to be, stand with us.
Ryan, real quick.
Yeah, the biggest threat to Wall Street and to Capitol down on Capitol Hill is the new coalition of organized labor and other advocacy groups, Americans for Financial Reform. They have a lot of money to lobby the Hill and to counteract the presence that Wall Street has down there. You're also going to see Democrats capitalizing on this anger as we go into the 2010 midterms. All Democrats have to do is paint the GOP as the party of Wall Street, and that's going to help them. And every time they notice that helping them, they're going to do it even more. So you're going to see a real battle.
Yeah, the problem, Ryan, we'll wrap this up, is that the Democrats are in power, and they appear to be the party of Wall Street, not the Republicans, because they're the ones with the authority and all the foot dragging and loopholes and exemptions for end users and foreign and all the rest of it. Ryan, thank you. George, thank you both for your time.